Hello, everybody, and welcome or welcome back to the second shelf and to another recent reads on Sunday. Yes, I'm on schedule again. It's Sunday today, so let's talk about the books that I finished recently that I haven't talked about in one of the wrap-up videos, like the video about the 1001 Books project and stuff like that. Anyway. Enough of the preliminaries. Let's talk about the books. The first book that I want to talk about, that I finished, that I haven't wrapped up yet, is a nonfiction book, Life on the Rocks, by Julie Bolt, published earlier this year. And this was a buddy read for me with Heidi from my Reading Life, who tries to educate me in reading about nature. And it's successful. As you know, I'm reading much more nonfiction books about nature writing, than I did like 2 years ago. And I'm absolutely enjoying it. And this is no exception. Julie Bolt was known to me by her previous book, Spineless, about jellyfish, which I really loved. I didn't know that jellyfish were such a fascinating creatures. And she is a marine and ocean biologist by trade, but then she moved to Texas and she worked as she made textbooks and things like that. And after a while, she began to rekindle her career, not as a scientist, as a researcher, but as a science journalist. And so the jellyfish was one project, and the Life on the Rocks is obviously about corals, was her next project. And just like in the previous book, she travels all over the world until Corona hits in 2020, but she talks with a lot of people about the status of the corals and coral reefs, and what various people, whether it's researchers, scientists, or private organizations or corporations, do in order to help restore corals. I thought it was really, really good book, engaging, interesting, educational. So if you're interested in coral reefs, I can certainly recommend this. I have one caveat though, the personal story in the book, which is not a lot. It's like a page every 20 pages or something, that had to do with the mental health issues of Julie Bolt's daughter. That was just not as successful for me in this book. I can understand why the author would want to talk about it, and how she tried to link her experience and her daughter's experience with various treatment options. But for me, this was a book about coral, so I just didn't engage as much with the parts about the mental health issues. But if you're interested in coral reefs, read this book for sure. Then the next book I finished was fiction, Imbolo Mbue, How Beautiful We Were, published in 2021. And that's all I can say about it, because this was my last read for the BooktubePrize, the semifinals. I'm judging fiction, Group B, and I already handed in my ranking, but I can't talk about the books, as you all know, until judging has been finalized, which will, I'm shaking the camera here, which will be end of July. So this was my last one. And the next book I finished, I want to talk about is nonfiction again, and it really goes well with this one and with the next book that I'm still reading, and this is Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, published in, look at that cover, I mean, such a brilliant, heart-wrenching picture, published in 1962. This was a present from Heidi, from my Reading Life, that I sort of, looked at, and then I thought, I save it. And finally, I read it a week ago, and it's a brilliant book. It's absolutely brilliant. It's mainly, Rachel Carson, she wrote about nature. She was a conserving person. I struggle with this word. Anyway, and I read a couple of her previous, her other books, but this is her most well-known book. It published, 2 years before she unfortunately died very young of cancer, and she researched the effects of pesticides, especially DDT, which was banned then, also thanks to her, 10 years after the publication of the book, but also other pesticides and the way we treat nature and what we want to eradicate. And it's brilliantly researched, and it had an impact, even though a lot of male scientists at the time called her an hysteric woman. What else is new? But it definitely did have an impact, especially on the US administration at the time. And, like I said, DDT was banned. It's brilliant. I mean, it is not talking about perils now. It's talking about perils 60 years ago. But the mechanisms that she shows of how we treat nature, how we look at nature, and how we think we can control nature by just, spraying poison, that hasn't changed, unfortunately, that much. So I thought it was a brilliant book, and I'm happy that I finally read it. And it tied in very nicely in the book that I'm still reading at the moment, although I'm almost finished because we have a check-in today on Sunday. So when this video goes up Sunday evening, I will have finished the book, and I will have talked to Heidi about it, because it's another buddy read with Heidi. On her suggestions, we read Michelle Nijhuis, Beloved Beasts. This is a originally Dutch name, which I in Dutch would pronounce Nijhuis, but her website and her Instagram page, they all are called rhymes with my house, so it's Michelle Nijhuis. She is a science journalist, and this one is a history of the conservation movement. There you have this word again. And Rachel Carson, of course, plays a role here. So what Nijhuis does is she looks at, from the early 19th century onwards, movements, people, researchers, scientists, but also politics of conservating nature. Or animals, or doing something in order to preserve the habitat or a plant, or mainly it's concentrating on animals. So each chapter focuses on one or two people who meant something in this development. It looks at the political the political impact or political instruments that were used, like, the passing of the Endangered Species Act or something like that. It's focusing on the US with a little sidesteps to UK and Africa, but the policy part is mainly focusing on the US. That's not a criticism, it's just a fact. I love this book. I'm absolutely loving this book. I think it's brilliant. It's so much information conveyed in a very engaging manner. You have to be interested in that topic, of course. Otherwise, it's boring, because you will learn a lot about how people looked at hunting and what hunting has to do with the conserving movement. I mean, you have to, like the Rachel Carson will bore you to death if you're not interested in the topic. But if you're at all interested in environmentalism and those types of developments from the 19th century onwards until the 21st century, this is a brilliant book. I'm loving it. And like I said, I'm almost done. I have like 10 pages to go. So this will be a 5-star read. I don't think the last 10 pages will make it less of a 5-star read. The next book that I'm also almost, and there is, no, I forgot to mention something earlier with this one. Life on the Rocks. There's also a Netflix documentary about coral reefs, Chasing Coral, and I left a link to the trailer. If you're interested in corals, Chasing Coral is certainly really good. Not that hopeful, but a good documentary. I forgot to mention that. Anyway. The next book I have almost finished. I will again have finished it when the video goes up. Is this one, Waiting for Tomorrow by Natasha Appener, translated from the French by Jeffrey Strawn. And this book is on my 1001 books I have to read before I die list for July, and I'm just checking the publication date, 2015 in French and 2018 in the English translation. I talked about this book in my regular update video about the project. Natasha Appener is a Mauritian author, and I read her previous book, The Last Brother, in German, in the German translation, like 10 years ago. So I wanted to include a Mauritian author for sure on the list, and I chose this one, and I'm almost done, 5 pages or something left. And it's about a couple. It opens when Adele the woman's name is Anita, and she is waiting for Adam, her husband, to come back from prison where he spent 4.5 years. We don't know yet why. And then slowly in the course of the book, we learn about the marriage between Anita and Adam. Anita is a writer or wants to be a writer. Adam is an architect and a painter or wants to be a painter. And they have a daughter, Laura, and then they move to the south of France, and they come in contact with Adele, who is like Anita from Mauritius, and then shit happens. And I don't want to spoil you, but shit happens. And the book is about the aftermath of that and what happened and how they deal with it, all the people involved. I really enjoy the writing style. It's very subdued, the style. It's not in the writing style that is in your face, despite the fact that there are quite some heavy issues discussed. So it has this very like a very soft melody as a style, and I'm really enjoying it. So yes, I will wrap this up, of course, in my next check-in about the 1001 book project. And that's also true for the next one, which I also am about to finish, Scarlet Pimpernel by the Baroness Orczy, published in 1905. This is a historical fiction novel. The Baroness was born in Hungary but moved to the UK, so the book was written in English. And it is historical fiction because it's set in 1792-ish in France and England, and it talks about the time of the Revolution when a lot of aristocrats were killed, and the Scarlet Pimpernel and his organization in England trying to save their fellow aristocrats in France and getting them out into England. It's just a really fun read. It's about this theme, of the hero, like Batman. It's a model for heroes like Batman who have this life. Or Superman, for that matter, like Ken Clark, who is this very awkward kind of journalist with the glasses, and he falls over stuff, but in truth, he is this superhero. And I think this is the first, at least that I know in literature, but correct me if I'm wrong, of this type of hero, where you have a heroic figure who leads a double life, or rather the other way around. You have this very ordinary person who is a bit dumb. At least that's what people think of him, and he leads this double life. And yeah, it's very, very enjoyable, and I'm glad I put this one on the list. So these are the books that I finished and that I will have finished when the video goes up. And as for the book that I'm about to start, I'm not 100% sure yet, because I'm gonna go away tomorrow again to see my mother, and I'm only taking one book in a physical copy with me, and a lot of times I'm reading ebooks. So I'm not sure whether I will actually start this book next week, but what I will take with me is this one, Thin Places by Carrie Nee Doherty, an Irish author, obviously. And this is let me check the publication date, 2021, so last year. It's a memoir about Ireland during the Troubles and nature. Obviously, this is a wing of some insect or something. The impact that nature had on her. The author was born in the midst of the Troubles, so in the 1980s. And talking about nature, as I said, because it's the pick for the Book Naturalist Book Club, so I'm sure it will talk about nature. But other than that, I don't know anything about the book. I've never heard about this author, but I'm trying to read all the books that Heidi and Doris, who run the Book Naturalist Book Club, everything that they pick. So I bought this one, and I will probably take it with me to Freiburg and maybe start it there or not. I will keep you posted. Anyway, so these were all the books that I wanted to talk about in my recent reads on Sunday. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. As always, I'm very much looking forward to your comments, and I'll see you all soon in the next one.